Hey, travel creators, welcome back to the podcast. I'm so excited for you to hear today's episode with the wonderful and brilliant Catie.
So I am a brand designer and strategist that specializes in helping personal brands find ways to grow their brands online and, more importantly, monetize their content. And so I work in all kinds of industries and with all kinds of people, but they all have the same problem, which is typically that they want to scale their brand in order to sell their services or a course or a digital product of some kind. And they need to change their brand on a strategic, intentional level in order to make that pivot and where they want to take their business. So I work kind of 50-50 from the design standpoint, where I do web design, logo design, brand identity, but then I also do a lot of strategy to back that up with my clients. And I work a lot within finding strategies to market your brand online too. So not just the strategy of like understanding your audience and competitive analysis and things like that I think most people think of when they think of brand strategy, but also what's the application? What does this look like in action?
That's amazing and important. Wow. Branding is something I will scream about forever because I don't think people get it. I don't think they get it. And I'm glad that you exist to not only help them secure what they're trying to do, but then build upon it because, I just come across so many, I've said it so many times and I won't stop saying it, but I come across so many people in my niche or creators in the travel space who are like, my goal is to inspire people to travel. And I'm like, that's cool, but like who? The way you talk to a luxury traveler is not the way that you talk to a backpacker. And until you realize that, this is going to be incredibly hard. Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I love branding. I think it's amazing and just so powerful. You mentioned your email list is one of the best things you did for your business this year. I want to know all about it. I want to know the scoop. I want to know how, why, what made it one of the best things you did. Tell me all about it.
Totally. So I've actually been writing a newsletter for a little over a year. I think I just wrote newsletter 106 this morning. So I recently hit 100. And when I started writing my newsletter, my goal was really not even like to build an email list right away or to see conversions or any of that. My initial goal was really just to practice finding my own brand voice and become a better writer. And through that, I have found so many ways to insert like my personal brand and storytelling into how I'm engaging with my most interested audience members, like the people that are more in than just a follower on Instagram. Not that a follower on Instagram isn't great, but like when somebody gives you their email address, that's even better. And so I found so many ways to connect with my audience through my newsletter, and that's really affected my brand like at an integral level. I'm actually in the process of rebranding right now. And I think that writing a weekly newsletter and really digging into what storytelling looks like for me and finding my own brand voice there has had a huge effect on where I want to take my brand moving forward. So I think like specifically for travel creators, it's a really great place to be able to share a little bit more and be slightly more long-winded than you are on Instagram. So you can just share more value there and then also write longer stories. And you can always find ways to turn your newsletter content into Instagram content and recycle it. And that's another thing that I work with like a lot of my one-on-one clients who do write newsletters. It's okay, cool. Well, we have this thing that you enjoyed making, and let's find ways to piece it apart and pick apart these golden nuggets, and you can use that in other places too. And I think that a newsletter is a really great like mid-level place between, okay, writing a whole blog, which is awesome, and then creating an Instagram post. It allows you to be a little bit more creative and a little bit longer winded and go a little bit deeper without feeling like you're necessarily like taking somebody to school. And you can always direct someone to a blog with it. You can direct someone to Instagram with it. Like it's a very much so choose your own adventure for the reader. And I think it's just such a great way to really find your voice if you don't know what that is yet.
Yeah, that's amazing. You said all the things I would have said about newsletters, so we can stop here. I'm just kidding. Newsletters are the only form of content that you actually freaking own your audience that nobody can take away from you. So if you have those contacts, you are golden. And I need you to understand that the content that you share in social media can literally be gone overnight. But when you have the contacts of your audience members, you have them. You can reach out to them if, God forbid, something did happen to your Instagram. You can tell them where you're rebuilding. You can tell them where to find you. And most importantly, tell them that you'll be back. Just that Meta screwed you over.
Totally. Yeah. And I think especially like when you are creating content on multiple platforms, everybody's so freaking busy. And like that's not just during the summertime thing when so many of us are traveling. Like it's an all the time thing, but especially right now in the summertime when you're probably traveling and a lot of your target audience is probably traveling. Not everyone is going to see every single Instagram post. I would argue that no one is going to see every single Instagram post you put up or every story or even YouTube and blog. And so a newsletter is a great way for the people who really want to like tag along to be notified on a more intimate level of whatever you have new going on that week.
It's so true. I saw a stat recently. I think it was like 6% of your followers see your posts. And it's like, whoa, wait a second. Why are we even wasting any time posting on social media if every single post is not pushing people to get on your email list or like take further action because we're not being seen? But like email, it makes so much sense because you hit send and it goes to every single person on that list. 100%. Do they open it? No. But there's no social platform that like, you know for sure 100% of your followers or your audience is going to receive the message you gave them. I just like, oh my gosh, I love email so much because I don't think people realize how powerful it is. Like, why are we wasting time learning how to create incredible real content? I mean, we should because it's like a lead magnet or a funnel filler to get people to your email list. But I think creating an incredible email list you should do first. I don't know. There's a million ways you could do it. But essentially, the gist is that it's astonishing. We spend so much time trying to please Meta and it hates us. And we just need to get people into our email list. It's wild.
Yeah, I think like your newsletter content also and creating content for your newsletter, finding your brand voice there helps you create better content for Instagram. So for example, like every newsletter that I write, I test 2 different hooks as a subject line and like whatever one wins, if I want to then create an Instagram post based on that newsletter content, I can pull that subject line as the hook. So it's like really working smarter, not harder when it
Yeah,
comes to Instagram too.
that is so cool. Have you noticed, like, do you feel like it's worked?
Yeah, I think Instagram is hard. It's hard for me. I think it's hard for a lot of people to feel like you're getting it right or you're playing the game the right way. I'm working with a strategist right now to refine my own strategy, but I would definitely say that testing hooks and newsletters and using them on Instagram, it has been helpful in just learning, like helping me to learn how to write better hooks for Instagram, even just kind of like making those connections in my own brain of like, okay, this worked well in my newsletter. Let's see if it works. Like it should work well on Instagram too. But I think like the success of a carousel, for example, can come down to so many things. And there's really not a way of gauging if this first hook on the flag was like the winning factor to make a carousel do well or not.
So true. Did you just hear what she does? So Catie takes her subject lines of her email newsletter and you can do an A/B test. You can test subject lines. So in your little subject line section of your email sender, there's an A and there's a B. And you can put in 2 different subject lines. And what will happen is when you send your newsletter, your service, I recommend ConvertKit, that's what I use, that's what I think everybody should use, will send a portion of your list subject line A. It will send a smaller portion of your list subject line B. And whichever one wins given a certain period of time, it will then send the rest of your list that email with the subject line that performed better. Catie is taking those subject lines that freaking won and putting them as our Instagram hooks. How genius is that? That is a brilliant way to repurpose your content because you have data that supports that people like it over the other option that you created for them. In this next part, we're going to get into how to know what your target audience even really wants from you.
So I think audience research is so important. It's a step that I don't think a lot of people really dig into or wait too long to dig into, maybe wait until after things aren't converting or connecting the way that they want them to. And they're like seeing problems and then use audience research as a solution. When if you really dig into audience research when you're first building your brand or you're rebranding or at any time that you need to, honestly, it can help you in so many ways. So when I say audience research, that can look like a few different things. So tracking back slightly to a newsletter, if you have a newsletter or an email list, you can send out a form of some kind. And that's my favorite way to do audience research because then I can actually get the exact words that people are saying out of their mouths. And so if you want to send out a form to people, one of my favorite ways to do that is to basically use an AI chatbot and tell AI, this is what I'm trying to find out. Can you help me brainstorm questions for a form? And then what's really cool is you can literally copy and paste those questions into type form and it'll put that whole actual form that people are going to take together in automatically. And then type form also tells you how long that questionnaire is going to take you to do, which is helpful for people. Again, people are busy. So if they're like, oh, this is only going to take me 2 minutes, cool. And then I like to give some type of a motivator for them to do it, whether it's they get some type of a code or I don't know, something at the end to get them to do it. But people that really love you and love your content will also just want to give you their feedback. So I think like getting people's words is the best way to do audience research. You can also ask questions on threads, ask questions on Instagram stories, and save people's feedback. Another good one is if you are sending a newsletter, I always have something on the bottom of my newsletter. And I do this for clients when we put together their newsletter strategies too, where it's like, hey, if you love this, let me know, send me your feedback. And then create some type of a resource for yourself, right? Because just doing the research and reading it, it's just not going to stay in your brain. It's not going to actually help you that much. So you can create a resource for yourself on Notion, a Google Doc, whatever you use to really just put together all of that audience research in one place and save it. And what you can do after that is, again, use AI as a tool to find patterns in that audience research. And there's so many different things that you can do. So I think like one that's really important for your audience, specifically for travel creators, is to understand where their audience is spending time online in order to effectively be creating content on the right platforms, right? Because if you are a travel creator and maybe you're creating content about traveling the country like after you retire, and so your audience is like a little bit older, like they're probably not going to be on Instagram. So that might not be the best place for you to create content. So I think that's one of the best ways to leverage audience research when you're first starting out is to figure out where your people are going to be spending the most time. You can also look at the places you've already created content to find information about audience demographics. So like where they're located, what their ages are, like women versus female, those things really do make a big difference in how you're reaching people at the end of the day. And again, like what platforms people are going to be on. And so my biggest advice would be to, as much as possible, get other people's words out of their mouths and actually create a resource of all of those things. And then you can use that resource and use an AI tool and ask it questions. So feed it all the things that people have told you and then ask it questions. What does my audience want to learn more about? What are their hesitations to traveling? Like the more specific questions that you can ask it. So maybe, again, I know you and I are both a little crunchier in our travel habits where you just got back from backpacking. I just got back from a 4-day canoe camping trip that we do every year. So it could be something as simple as what are my audience's hesitations to traveling off the grid or to backpacking or to sleeping in the wilderness. It can be whatever, but you're basically using all of that research you did, the things that your people are already telling you, and then training an AI bot to help you find patterns and connections that are just so much harder and more time consuming to do on your own once you've created that resource for yourself.
This is a genius way to use AI to help you understand your target audience. I even have an episode dedicated to how travel creators can implement AI, and I have written out those specific prompts that I talk about in that episode for you in a nice little PDF so you don't have to listen and type, but you can instead copy and paste. They also have examples in them. I'll leave that PDF linked for you in the show notes, and my AI episode is only a few episodes away. This is off topic, but do you use Threads?
Yes.
Okay.
I do use Threads. I don't know that I consider myself like a full-blown Threads girl yet. I want to be, and I do have phone over there, and I definitely feel like I've been able to more organically connect with peers and my ideal audience on Threads than I have on just a regular Instagram feed. Personally, I'm a visual person. I'm a designer, so visual stuff is easy for me, right? Like video and graphics and things that are hard for a lot of people, but words are a little bit more second nature. But I found with Threads, like the more fun I can have with it and just keep it casual, the better. And it's also helped me to find ways to relate to people in all of my content. I think that Threads is a really great place for audience research because, again, you're getting people's unfiltered thoughts without even having to ask them there. It definitely takes a little bit more legwork and scrolling on your end to find the type of conversations I think that are going to apply to what you're looking for than it would if you're just directly interviewing someone or sending out a form or having people like answer questions that you're asking. But that has its own power too, just in seeing what people are talking about. For example, I had one thread pop off, for me at least, where somebody was basically hating on brand designers using Notion for client portals. And so I just said, like, I just read a thread of people hating on brand designers for using Notion for client portals, and I'm personally offended. And like that whole, I got so many comments on that thread, so many people asking questions, and like it inspired a reel that I want to create now. So I think Threads is a really great place for like testing ideas and like testing audience interest and like seeing what people are talking about on their own, but also seeing what types of conversations people are interested in having with you. I think there's a lot of people on Threads who are maybe posting 2 or 3 consecutive threads where they're like educating and teaching you something. think it takes a little bit to get leverage with that. Maybe you have to have a lot of followers and be posting on there super consistently every day. But I think it is a place where you can play around and not have to have this dialed in strategy, you know?
Okay, this is good. This is good. I felt like you were the right person to ask about this because you get it. You get content things. This is good to know. I don't know. I feel like maybe I'll try it. I have a lot of things to say and it could be fun. What I really want to do is get on there and see how my target audience is using it and see if I can figure out or understand or recognize patterns in how that's happening. But that's research for another day. But I would love to just yell into the Threads void about things that are important to me. I think that's crazy. Also,
Yeah.
not using Notion. What the heck? What are they using? Google Sheets? That's monstrous. That's crazy.
Basically, the gist of that thread was a lot of like tech dudes, so to say, who were like really into sending lots of emails, it sounded like, which is my worst nightmare. But again, all tracks back to your audience because maybe if you're working with a big corporation or product based brand, then emails are better and they don't want to deal with the Notion dashboard. But that's not my vibe. I feel like the major theme of this whole conversation is like it all tracks back to knowing your audience and like what's going to resonate with them, what's going to work well with them.
Ooh, I would have opinions on that too. That's crazy. Yeah. I would love to see how they organize their content, these tech bros. Okay, I am obsessed with this carousel you posted so long ago. Not so long ago, in May. I keep just coming back to it. It's so freaking good. And the gist is really your logo doesn't matter if you don't have a strategic understanding of who you are selling and creating for. Because I think, well, one, we know branding is not just your logos and colors. That's like arguably the most fun part, but that's not it. I just want you to basically explain like why it matters so much more than the colors you choose to represent yourself.
Yeah, I think people go two different directions with this, right? So a lot of people lean so heavily into their brand identity. So their logos, their colors, how they sound, basically how they look online. And they form that brand identity around the type of audience that they're trying to attract, but it doesn't actually reflect them as a person. And then they're left feeling disjointed with it and not super inspired by it. They feel boxed in. And a lot of branding professionals would argue with me about this, whether or not your brand should reflect you or the people that you're trying to attract. And that does track back to your audience. But I think specifically for travel creators, your brand should reflect you. And when it comes to colors and logos, nobody cares that much. Yes, like having a cool logo, having colors that pop and are attractive and go together and create emphasis for things like buttons, having colors that have enough contrast so that you can read your content. All of these things are important, but they're just making an impression on people. They're maybe something that they remember subconsciously, but nobody is interacting with you because of your logo. That's just a cherry on the sundae or whatever. People are going to interact with you way more based on your content and your voice and your values and whether or not those things resonate with them. And so again, yeah, like knowing your audience, it does track into it's like this twofold thing, because knowing your audience and what they're looking for, they're going to look for what you're doing. So your example earlier of like luxury travel versus crunchy girl travel, totally different voices, different locations, different budgets, different demographics, psychographics, all of the things. When I say demographics, I mean basically these are like this is where they live, this is their age. Psychographics are more like what they're interested in, right? Your luxury travel girl might be taking daily Pilates classes at a studio, where like your country travel girl oftentimes will maybe live in the middle of fucking nowhere and not even have a gym in their town. You know what I mean? Totally different interests from a personal branding perspective. So I think that you as a person, you as your brand and the face of your brand, that's a big part of your identity. And the things that you talk about should be reflected in your brand identity. And those things need to track back. So yeah, a luxury looking travel brand is going to look a lot different and have different colors and logos and fonts than a backpacking brand, right? Or like a digital nomad style brand. And there's going to be all kinds of differences there. And I'm really big into the idea of like visual storytelling. So I think that people should think about visual storytelling more than their logos and their colors, because you can do that all by yourself. You can tell stories visually and start getting audience members, making money off your brand before you have logos or colors. Go pay somebody to do that after you earn a little bit of money from it. You can still tell stories visually and build your brand identity without any of those things. And again, advice you probably aren't going to expect to hear from a brand designer, but at the end of the day, I think understanding your audience, the type of content that they want to see from you, and then tracking that back to your brand identity and how people are going to resonate with how you show up online is going to be more helpful than having a logo that you made on Canva just because you feel like you need one.
In case you need to hear that again, nobody is interacting with you because you have a cool logo. They're not. I'm sorry. They might click on it, but then if the rest of your information on your social page or on your website sucks, then they're gone. That's it. Your brand is so much more than just these cute little pictures or cute little logos or whatever you want to call them, or about your brand colors. It's about understanding who you are, who your target audience is, and how you communicate both of those things in your online space. I have an episode with Andrea, which is really good to listen to, about branding, as well as with Alicia. They are both fantastic resources to learn more about honing in on your brand. And like I have said, I think that we can't skip an episode without talking about branding. It's just that important, okay? And if you need help getting started with a solid brand foundation, reach out to me and I will put you in contact with these people. They are great resources to help you get started and feel confident. What you said was so brilliant. And it also reminds me of like clarity versus creativity, and it pays so much more to just be clear in who you're trying to talk to and how you're trying to talk about yourself and what you're doing versus then being creative. Is it, of course, like we all know when you click on somebody's social media profile and it's obvious they don't know how to use social media and you're, or like a brand even, and you're like, this is hot trash, but they're like maybe selling something awesome. So I think like you're so right. We should spend more time in the beginning getting incredibly clear on what we're doing and who we're doing it for, and then spend our time and money investing in making it look beautiful. But like that's the fun part, you know? Making it look beautiful is the fun part. And that's what sucks, but I love it. Also, psychographics, new word for me. That was incredible. Love that. Love that so much. I think this is great advice. Finding the hot takes. So, okay, your advice is reading through social media is where your audience shows up to see what questions or problems they're talking about. I think that's so true.
So I think that a lot of it comes down to here are the things, the conversations that people are having already. And then this is something that I have a unique point of view on, right? So for example, like if you're a backpacker, I think like there's so many jokes and reels that I find so funny about like, show me your most expensive outfit. And it's your hiking pants and your Patagonia jacket, all this stuff. And like that stuff is great. Don't get me wrong. But a hot take could be that like you don't need the most expensive thing to get started, right? Like the first backpack I ever went backpacking with was like my best friend's old Boy Scout backpack that was dry rotted because I wanted to make sure I liked it before I went and bought my $450 Gregory 60-liter backpack that I love, right? But like I needed to know what I wanted and needed first. You know, I have Amazon hiking pants that I love, and maybe my next pair now will be something more expensive, but like a hot take could be that you don't have to go spend thousands of dollars in order to have a backpacking experience, in order to go camping, in order to even travel. Like there's all different ways to travel on different budgets. And so I think bringing your personal opinions and your unique point of view into larger conversations within your niche is where and how you find the hot take. So you probably already have the hot takes inside your brain. You just don't know it yet. So I think tuning into what people are talking about or what problems are arising, it can just take some like data mining and digging to figure out like, oh, this is what other people think. I actually don't agree with that. And this is why.
Right now, I think a travel hot take for me is counting how many countries you've been to. I think that that's cool. One, I'm kind of interested in knowing where you've been and things like that. But two, it's not like any of us have ever truly explored 100% of any place we've ever been. So in some ways, it feels kind of weird to say that. Plus, like, does it really matter? Does it really matter? Does that impact you being able to give tips to people? I'm not totally sure. Let me know what you think of this hot take on Instagram. Yes, I'm giving you permission to come for me for this hot take at Travel Content Writing. The next step of that is always a hard decision that I never have great advice for. And we had kind of talked about it in the beginning a little bit. But of how much of you should include in your brand. Should they be separate things? Should they be you? How much should we talk about you versus how much should we talk about what you can offer somebody else is going to be a perpetual question. And I think it doesn't have a super clear answer because it should be both, because you can do both if you can do it correctly and know how to have copywriting skills or like are very clear in what you're trying to accomplish and who you're trying to accomplish it for. But I think that trips up a lot of people sometimes. But what are your thoughts? What advice would you give to people who are trying to figure out how much should I talk about myself? How much should I not?
Yeah. So this is a little bit eerie, honestly. I just was writing a blog about this right before we hopped on that I called How to Let Your Personal Brand Run Wild. And I gave 3 examples of places to really infuse your personal brand. And in that blog, like I talked about, you do want to have a level of privacy with your own life. And like you do want to have boundaries, especially when it comes to, I think, like creating content. And this is, I think, a huge thing for travel creators. Like you want to be present in that moment, in the experience that you're at. And then also like you don't want to necessarily have to be thinking about creating content the whole time. And like, how do you find those boundaries in your everyday life when you're traveling, whatever? And so I think a few ways that you can practice, like really infusing your personal brand and like finding that balance. I think the biggest one is brand voice. And so just working on removing that filter from the way that you would say things naturally when you're speaking to someone, or you say things in your head, and the way that you're typing them in content, because we do like filter ourselves, I think, just subconsciously when we're doing that. But if you can practice really infusing your personal brand into your brand voice, having some more fun with it, whether that's a newsletter, an Instagram post, micro copy, which is like basically anywhere, like on an email subscribe. If you look at people's email subscribes, like copywriters especially, you'll see like really fun bits of micro copy there that really speak to who they are as a person. Maybe you're mentioning like silly things that you enjoy, whether it's, I talk about coffee because I could never stop drinking coffee. So that's in my brand voice all the time. Or your brand voice can reference shows you like, and then that kind of like tags back to your personal brand. Where like, I watch the same sitcoms over and over again because I'm an elder millennial. And it helps people get to know you and make these subconscious connections to you, whether they realize it or not. And I think it also just like makes creating content and running a business so much more fun when you can speak in that way and remove that invisible barrier between how you would say things naturally and how you are saying things when you're creating content. So brand voice, I think, is like the first place to really practice. And that tracks back to even how I was saying how I started a newsletter just to like really hone in on my own brand voice. And then the second place that I think is a really easy place to infuse more of your personal brand and again find that balance is Instagram stories and threads, because I find that those are, it's like almost because you have a character limit and a time limit, it almost forces you to think less and just be yourself a little bit more. And then third is in your brand identity. So this is like coming full circle now, where I was saying like, yeah, your colors and your logos are important, but they should really be aligned and feel and look like you. And so your brand identity, I'm really big on like your colors. For example, I have a freebie on my website that you can do this with, but like your colors mimicking the world around you, not just the colors that you feel like fit your industry or that are going to attract your people. Just make it the colors you like, the colors you wear, the colors that are in your house, because that's going to make creating content like way easier and you have to think about it less. And I think brand photos are another place, like any type of photo, video content that you're creating, that you can really let your personal brand run wild. And I think finding those places to just think less about how you're showing up as a business owner is a really great way to practice like finding that balance between your business, who you are as a business owner, who you are as a brand. And there's always going to be things that you are in real life that you don't necessarily need to bring into your business, and you get to pick and choose what those things are. But I think like the way that you communicate is like the biggest thing when it comes to personal branding, because if someone sees you on your stories talking somewhat naturally and then like reads a blog that seems like very polished and professional, there's like a disconnection there and things just feel less authentic, and people are becoming more and more susceptible to that or aware of that, and quite frankly just turned off by that too.
I think too, when you try and force yourself into the box of who you want your business to be, then you can also like confuse your audience, because like naturally as humans, we want to connect with other people and share about what's going well for us because we can't help it. And so if you're like strictly all business and then you post like a story and surprise behind the scenes, it's what? Secretly we'll love it, but it's also confusing. But you get to be yourself in your business when you let yourself. And it's so much fun because humans see humans. I love it. Okay. Anything else you want to say about branding or newsletters or anything that you're like, if I say this, I will feel good the rest of the day?
Yeah, I
Or
think
travel.
just that, oh gosh, now we're opening it up. Okay. Travel, I think removing the guilt from traveling, especially as a young person, and finding ways to do that and prioritize traveling, no matter the fact that I'm running a business full time by myself, renovating a house, have a humongous garden to take care of. I think traveling is such a great way to find clarity in your business, find clarity in the way you want to create content, and find space to just reconnect with who you are at the end of the day. And your brand, in my opinion, should look, feel, and sound like you. And it should be fun. It should be something that excites you. When you do have brand colors, logos, brand photos, illustrations that you love, creating content, creating newsletters, your website, like all of the things that can feel stressful and overwhelming are more fun when they're inspired because they're aligned with you and your values and how you want to show up in the world and like the things that you're already doing. And so I'm just huge on finding connections and all of the things and like connecting the dots. And don't be afraid to show up differently. Nobody really cares about color psychology. If red is your favorite color and you wear your red raincoat in every single one of your brand photos because it pops so well against the trees you're hiking in, then use freaking red and use green. Who cares? Like, people don't care nearly as much as you think that they do. Just do what you enjoy and you're going to have more fun with it. And when you have more fun with it, you're feeling more inspired by it, then that's going to filter into all of the things that you're doing online, all the content that you're creating is going to be better when it's inspired and when you're actually enjoying the process and having fun with it.
So true. That was like a mic drop moment. That was great. Catie is so right. If you take nothing away from this, it's just that she's right. Okay. Have you ever noticed that the more time you spend away from your computer or your desk or just out in the world, the better ideas you have and or the more excited you are to sit down and work? I find that for myself. I am so much more, this sounds so obvious. Everything I say, maybe not everything. A lot of the pieces of advice I give sound so obvious, but we just need to be told them again. For example, the more that we sit down and work, the closer we are to feeling burnt out. That seems obvious, right? But the more we take time away, it's so much more exciting to come back to doing our work. It's simple. This is all very simple, but it's not necessarily easy to give yourself that time off. And if you are a creator who, well, I guess this could go either way. If you're a creator who content creation is not your full-time thing, or you are a creator who content creation is your full-time thing, I encourage you, no matter what camp you're in here, to put a date on your calendar that you're going to not do anything related to content creation for a few days. Because I promise when you come back, you'll be much more excited and you'll be able to go out and experience the world and then come back and share about it. But amazing things can happen when we take steps away from our desk and our creative space. Before I let you get away, where do you want people to find you?
Totally. So you can find me on Instagram at Cedar June Branding. And then my website is cedarjunestudio.com. You can subscribe to my newsletter at cedarjunestudio.com/subscribe. I am in the process of rebranding and my website's going to be under construction soon. So Instagram and newsletter are definitely the best places to keep in touch and stay up to date on my rebrand process, how you can rebrand, how you can build your brand, and just really tangible ways to connect the dots between your branding and your marketing and make branding make sense.
I love it. Yes, please go subscribe. I will leave a link in the show notes for that because it's important. Okay, last thing. Can tell you're from the Midwest. Where are you from?
I'm not. It's so funny. I get that so often. I'm actually from an hour south of Buffalo. So I think I
No
have a
way.
bit of Midwest sensibility. I mean, I've never even been to New York City or I'm from Buffalo, spend a lot of time in northern New York. I get the Midwest thing a lot. I think it's because I really emphasize my vowels too. Like it's just the Buffalo accent a little bit.
I was so confident. I was like, Midwest sees Midwest. I just know it. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Is New York, would you say it's like the mid-Atlantic? Is that what you would say where New York is? I don't know.
I feel like New York is like the strangest state, honestly, because
so.
Western New York, like very far west near the Great Lakes and bordering to Canada where I live, is a lot different than northern New York where the Adirondacks are, where you can hike and there's like so much cool stuff up there. And then everybody calls upstate New York everything above New York City. And there's so much up there. That whole statement just cracks me up. Yeah, I don't even remember what the question was now, but New York's a weird state.
Yeah. It's really astonishing that like New York and Arizona are even in the same country. How's that allowed?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But that is crazy. Wow. You should just pose as a Midwestern if you
Yeah. If you
want.
haven't already, travel to New York. Go to the Adirondacks. It's a secret that I probably shouldn't be spilling. But if you're a West Coast hiker, you have no idea what's in for you. Go scramble and climb some mountains in the Adirondacks and then tell me how much of a hiker you are.
Oh my gosh. I'm going next week to the Finger Lakes and I've never been. My boyfriend Matt and I, we moved out of our apartment in Boston literally a month ago today. And I've been like doing some travel and like work stuff before, but we are traveling in an SUV with a rooftop tent indefinitely.
Awesome.
And New York state parks are first try. Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to DM you all the New York recs.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Okay, that was incredible. Thank you so much for spilling all of this knowledge. I can't wait to share it with everybody and pick it apart and just talk about it forever.
Thank you so much. This was super fun and an awesome experience for me, and I'm super excited about it.
Oh, that was such a good episode with Catie. There's so many good nuggets in here, from AI to repurposing your content to getting a kick in the pants to start your email newsletter. There's so many good bits. I encourage you to come back to this one. I am wishing you the happiest of creating this week. Right now, I am looking at the Bighorn National Forest in Wyoming. It is freezing cold, but we're having a great time, and I get to create content for you looking at beautiful things. What could possibly be better? And for this week's creator shout out, we have Roxanne from Travel Creator CEO, and she teaches you how to get paid to travel, even without thousands of followers. And for us, she is letting us in on her Travel Creator CEO course. Oh my God. Let me tell you a little bit about it. This course will help you go from a novice traveler to a travel content creator with a thriving business, even if you don't have a shit ton of followers, and even if you don't travel 24/7. In this course, she shares ways you can monetize your travel content via UGC, affiliate marketing, and selling digital products. This is something you're not going to want to miss from Roxanne. I will leave a link for you in the show notes to sign up. And if you are a creator listening to this wondering how I can feature you on my podcast, I certainly can. There's a little link to drop all your awesome info in the show notes, and I will feature you in a future episode. Happy creating, friends. I'll see you next week.